suit? You have to
Got
have your
these
slippers
bad
on.
boys on here.
Doing your Crocs.
We got wall to wall rugs, so I'm always toes out.
Ooh,
Yes.
fancy.
See, rug. You need that.
That's the way to go.
Here
we go.
I used to always wear slippers though around the house, but I half love, half hate having wall to wall rug.
Yeah, you can't buy you can't buy that
Oh, don't
Mario
talk about it.
Kart
Mario
Live
Kart. Yeah, I don't want to talk about
You
that.
can't buy it.
That's a sore subject.
I can't buy it either. The house is just too small for that.
You said you can't get it?
No, I can, but it wouldn't be that fun because there isn't enough like space for the carts to roam around freely and things like that.
Ah, I got you.
I'm green.
Right.
I'm good to go.
In any case, we are here on another side quest adventure.
Ooh.
This time that we are interviewing actually VGA nominated member of Polygon Treehouse, right? That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And their game Röki. This is Alex. Alex, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Alex, and from Cambridge in the UK, and for quite a long time worked at PlayStation, and then after about 14 years of doing that, me and my friend Tom, we found our own indie studio. It was about 3 years ago now. And it's and so we started making this adventure game called Röki, and that came out about 5 months ago now, and that was our debut indie title. So that's a very, very brief story so far, but it's a non-violent adventure game. So it's about exploration and solving puzzles and making friends with like Scandinavian folklore monsters. Broadly.
Yeah, it's a wonderful game. I've been playing it. I just got past the with no spoilers. I just got past the bear trials to try and say as least as I can about it. Man, it's brilliant. Like these types of games are right up my alley. I play a lot of indie games and things of that nature, and it's beautiful, man. It's a wonderful kind of whimsical yet still dark story. It's really cool, man. I'm impressed. I'm thoroughly impressed. It's a wonderful game, man.
Really nice to hear. Thank you very much.
We've been doing a lot of, I don't want to say complaining, but needing more games that have like dark tone stories, things like that, because I feel like a number of the games that we've been playing and seeing recently have trying to get friendlier and friendlier because, they're trying to expand to like families and things like that. But you don't need to achieve that and leave those types of stories at the side at the same time. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, we very much like when we were like we knew we wanted to make a non-violent game. So we've been making violent games for quite a while. We did quite a lot of work on the Killzone series, which obviously is quite can be gruesome at times. And also like we were getting a bit older and like a little bit like and like Tom has a kid, and so we were like, okay, well, like we're all right if there's a game that he can play with his kid, but then like we were really inspired by when we were kind of had the light bulb of the Scandinavian folklore and wasn't really the Greek gods like Thor and Odin and all that stuff. It was more like the creepy creatures from the lakes and the forest and the cave and all that stuff. All those original stories are really, really dark. There's like a lot of people getting dragged into the water and dying because they're all like cautionary tales. And so I think, yeah, I guess with all the kind of, I guess, I don't know what you call it, Disneyfication of things, they take a bit, take all those kind of gruesome edges get sanded away. And so it's, you need like you need contrast, right? You need to have the dark and the light and inner story.
Absolutely. You got to have some sort of conflict, to really tell a story of like loss and love and sacrifice and things of that nature. So, yeah, man, it's for those of you who have never played it out there, it's kind of like a modern spin on the old like point and click kind of Grim Fandango kind of style games.
How would you categorize it? To me, when I played it, kind of caught me off guard. I was like, oh, it's like a drag and drop game or something. It's different. How would you?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think we were our goal at the start was to basically like those are the games that we loved growing up. Like Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, Grim Fandango a little bit later on. But so we but those games have kind of fallen away a little bit. So we wanted to kind of go, okay, well, if we were to make a game in that genre now for players today, how would we do it? What would we modernize? So I guess I'd describe it as our modern update of the classic adventure game.
Right.
Nice.
Because some people describe it as point and click, which is fine. There's not actually there's no point in clicking. So
right.
It feels a bit like a but then that's an interesting. But then I think obviously the underlying mechanics are the same as those classic point and click games. So I can definitely see where that kind of comparison comes from. But our kind of modern take on those games, and a lot of that stuff comes in like how you're moving around. So you've got like direct control of Tuva with the controller, and just trying to make it guessing some of the bad like reputation some of those old games have now when people try and play them is that they can be quite frustrating. So it's about trying to kind of really work hard on the puzzle design to make sure that it was they were really well balanced, so that people didn't just hit a brick wall. And also because we were really keen on like telling a story that had quite a strong emotional punch, and we wanted to make sure that people got to the end of it. So the story without an ending is like a pretty rubbish story. So
right.
And like one of my favorite games is Ico, and that does something really cool where the third act of Ico really accelerates you towards the end. So you become really quite powerful, and it kind of really like propels you through the last bit of the story. So we were just conscious of like, making sure that people got to the end of the game, and so then balancing it in the kind of cinematic way to try and make it kind of accelerate you to the kind of climax of the narrative, rather than making it harder and harder and harder and harder. So it means that people would fall by the wayside. But
you touched on a number of points that we like to bring up while we're doing our thing. We like to play games on the hardest mode. So hearing that you're trying to find a balance to make sure that it is challenging for those who like hard games, but not too challenging to ostracize those who kind of want to get into, they may not be into this type of game and they want to give it a try. You're not immediately putting them off because of the difficulty of the game. That's really a hard balance to achieve. And here you did it pretty well. My friend Key, he loves puzzles, so I can't wait till he actually gets to these parts and tells me how he figured them out.
He's saying that as a troll because I'm always talking about puzzles.
Yeah, Key has a hard time with puzzles. He doesn't enjoy them as much as me and Reese do. But so for you guys to come out with this game, it's your debut game for your studio. Like, how did it feel for your debut game to be nominated for VGA?
So it was pretty staggering, and I think people always say, "Oh, it's a massive surprise." Like I wasn't even we weren't even considering that we would be in the running for it. So I only found out when I was actually buying those slippers that we were looking at.
Nice.
Because my wife was like, "Your slippers are a disgrace." They were like full of holes, and so I was like, "Yeah," I went in to like get my phone, and I had loads of messages, and I was like, "Oh, what's all this about?" And it was then that I found out. So then basically it was just checked that we weren't being punked. To make sure
gotta look into it first.
Yeah, exactly. Don't end up with egg on my face. And so it was a real delight. And I guess after we spent 3 years working really hard on the game, and it was really rewarding and really gratifying to see that it had been kind of highlighted on that global stage.
Right.
It was really, we were chuffed to bits, and I think we still can't really believe it. It's been a really, really nice surprise, and especially after the kind of crappy year that everyone's had, everything that's been going on, to kind of cap it off in that way was amazing. Yeah, really amazing.
That's kind of interesting to me.
Staggering and amazing.
They don't give you a phone call, a text or something, an email like, "Hey, you're nominated." And it's just
No. It was all it was all completely just, I found out. I mean, they did. I think they tagged us into like the announcement for a nomination.
Okay, yeah.
Wow,
that was nice. But
what a way to find out. That's pretty awesome.
I know, right?
not for the faint of heart. It was,
So you said it took you a number of years to develop this game. How long have you been in the game dev scene in its entirety?
2002 was when I started as a junior artist and animator. So yeah, I'm bang on 40, and so yeah, basically I went to uni, a university, guessing, yeah, and then yeah, I studied animation, and then actually, so strange enough, Tom, who's the other part of Polygon Treehouse, I was also at university with him, and we were on the same course in the same year, and then we both got jobs as junior artists at the time. It was the Sony Cambridge studio, and that was working on PlayStation 2 games. So that was they were just finishing off Primal, and the game that we went to work on, it was slightly less well known. It was called Ghost Hunter. It was like a kind of third person action adventure, kind of like update of Ghostbusters, but a bit scarier. Yeah, it was cool. It looked really nice, and it was a very nice first project. But that studio is the studio responsible for the medieval games. So prior to being Sony Cambridge, it was Millennium, I think it was called. So they basically made they were responsible for the medieval series. So I worked on the PSP version of that, and 24 the game, games like that, and then the studio kind of got intertwined with Guerrilla Games. So we then basically so Tom went out to Amsterdam to work out there on Killzone 1, and then I went out to Amsterdam for like a part-time year and a half to work on Killzone 2, doing character stuff. And so then basically the Guerrilla Games essentially assimilated Sony Cambridge studio, and it became Guerrilla Cambridge from that point. So, but yeah, 2002 was my first kind of role, and so yeah, it was approaching 20 years, which I suppose is not bad. It's a nice round number.
It's pretty dope, man. That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, and you clearly know what you're doing since you've worked on a number of games that we've played.
I know, right?
He's a giant Killzone fan. So I'm pretty sure he's hiding his excitement when you mentioned that you're working on that game.
Yeah, I love
for you to have bounced between those number of studios this time, and now to go from that to a VGA nominated video game, that's quite the storied history.
Yeah, it's cool. It doesn't. I guess when you're there, the kind of magic, not the magic fades off, but you're aware of the kind of how all the cogs go together, and all the kind of the things that would need fixing. But no, I can't complain. I think that's we're both very grateful for working at Sony, because of the amount of varied titles we got to work on across a number of different genres, and working with the team out in Amsterdam was great, because they really like from an art perspective, they've got a really strong art team and really strong art leadership. Definitely learnt loads from that, and it was kind of nice because you got to like work at a completely different studio, but you didn't really switch jobs. You were kind of like just on loan, and then you came back. So, but yeah, no, it's been really cool. But I think in some ways it almost feels like kind of come full circle a little bit, because in terms of art and that stuff. So when we started off on doing PS2 stuff, feel free to stop me if I'm babbling.
No, not at all.
So when I started off doing PS2 stuff, everything in the art point of view was quite broad. So I would, as a junior character artist, I'd get a concept art, 2D drawing from the concept artist, and then I would make the characters. I'd skin and rig them, which is like setting them up for animation.
Right.
And I'd animate them, and I'd also texture them, and we'd also direct the cut scenes and like do all the cameras. And
that's awesome.
So wow. you do that really broad range of stuff under the umbrella of character artist and animator. It was like one job role. Whereas as the kind of went to PSP, PS3, PS4, PSVR, things got more and more specialized. So by the time it got to like PS3 and Killzone 2, I was on Killzone 2. I was making characters, and but it was by that point it became so specialized. It was like you would model and texture the characters. You didn't do any of the setup. You didn't
just worked on that. on the characters themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think things in big studios even become even more specialized again, where you'd have people who just do the high res sculpts for things, or you have people who are just surfaced artists who just texture things or generate the textures for things. So weirdly, going to indie stuff is much more like going back to like PS2, where actually make the characters, I skin and rig the characters, animate them, do the UI.
Absolutely.
It's kind of feels indie stuff feels to me like going back to kind of the start of my career again. And I really enjoyed the kind of like doing lots of different things. I find it quite interesting to be able to jump from discipline to discipline. But I think those early days of like PlayStation 2 development definitely gave me an advantage, or gave us a kind of strong foundation, I guess, to go indie. We had it was a little bit dusty. We had to dust off some of those skills. But,
right. You got to shake off the rust a little bit.
Exactly. Like you hear your back crack. But it was really, it's been really nice to go back to some of that more general way of working, I guess.
So how was Polygon Treehouse started? When did you guys decide, hey, let's get together and make our own thing?
So let me guess. So I think the studio was founded in March 2017. So but basically the Guerrilla Cambridge studio went pop. So that basically we'd worked on Killzone Mercenary on the Vita, and then we did a launch title for PSVR called Rigs, which was like a kind of like a VR sport.
Oh, I know that game. Yep.
Yeah, it was cool. And like and the games they all reviewed well, but then the studio decided that they were going to close the studio down. But obviously we've been there for ages, like 40 years, like a long time. And I think it's probably a testament to the studio and the people there that we were both there for so long, because the variety of stuff we got to work on was good, and it went through a number of different, I guess, like evolutions during the time there. So it always felt kind of new and fresh. But then we had the choice when the studio closed of, do we want to go into another big studio and carry on doing art director stuff somewhere else and carry on doing that, or do we want to like do something different? And yes, that's kind of a difficult decision to make, because there's pluses and minuses to both. I kind of think that I think at a certain point the idea of not knowing whether we could do it or not was too hard to leave that question unanswered. So in the end, we're just like, gotta do it.
Yeah,
gotta do it.
Let's just do it.
Gotta take the leap, man. You gotta do it.
Love it.
See, you keep touching on ours because where we are now, what we're doing right now, we've talked about for a long time, and then we finally just said, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And then now here we are.
You got to do it. I think
just have to do it.
Yeah, there will be that point where it's not going to happen unless someone makes a choice and goes and let's do it. And it is kind of scary, but I guess in the idea of like of not knowing was too. And I think that's the thing. If it all was a horrible disaster, then we would get proper jobs.
right. So we actually have a couple of people who follow us, and they're interested in doing their own games and things of that nature. And we just wanted to know if you can shed some light on the process of getting funded for a game like this.
Sure. So I think we applied initially to, there's a kind of a funding body in the UK called the UK Games Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did like a pitch video for them. They have like rounds of funding. So I'm guessing a good thing to do if you're interested in this kind of thing is find out who those funding bodies are in your country or your region, and see like what the application process is like, or when it opens up. So I think they run like one round every year where basically you submit like this big pitch document and a video, and then they would give you like a certain amount of funding to kind of get you on your way. And I think then it's about basically, but then funding past that point is attracting like a publisher or a platform holder, like one of the consoles for the rest of the funding. And so the initial funding from the UK Games Fund allowed us to then to go off and like work on the prototype or the start of the game and try and like build up kind of like a vertical slice, so it's showcasing all the different aspects of the game, or like a demo that we could then send to publishers to see if they wanted to sign us. And fortunately, one of them did, so that was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. Basically, in the kind of pitch to publishers, there's kind of two main parts. One is like a demo, like it's always good to have the demo. The other one is like a called a pitch deck. So basically, it's a really like a short PDF document, basically. Well, because we've been like first party in Sony, so when someone said, "Can you send us your pitch deck?" I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
like a 15 to 20 page PDF document. It's kind of like a slideshow. It basically just gives a really high level overview of like who you are, what the game idea is, how much funding you need, what the like really high level kind of timeline is, like when it might like come out and that kind of thing. And also like some kind of analysis on like other games in similar areas and just like what your thinking is behind it. But the idea is it's like a really high level presentation pitch, essentially, that they can they can read and really high level go, they can look at it for 2 minutes and go, right, I can understand who these people are, and I can understand what this game is. Do I want to sign it, or am I interested in talking to them further? Yes or no. So it's a really interesting exercise in being able to distill your idea and get the essence of your idea out in a very concentrated way. So it's a really good exercise to do. It's like, when people talk about elevator pitches, and they're going like, you're in the elevator and you have 30 seconds to describe to some important person the essence of the movie or the game you want to make. And it's about, it's a really interesting exercise in distilling down the essence of your game or your idea. You may discover some things about it that you didn't know. So,
it's not all text; it's images as well.
It's good to make it like art, background, like quite minimal text, so quite.
I was gonna say.
Well, he said PDF. I'm thinking you about to read 30 pages of text.
No, dude.
Oh man,
that would be absurd, man. Like, I don't know. I feel like if I had millions of dollars to give away for something and someone just showed me text, I'm like, man, you gotta spice it up. You gotta give me
write up a 60-page dissertation on what my game is about.
Yeah, dude.
Well, give me
like, these are video games. They're they're visual, they're audio. You got to give me something than just text.
Yeah, so they are very visual, and they have to look like very, graphic design wise, look pretty pretty slick. And yeah, I think if you present like a wall of text, then I think it will get closed pretty quickly.
Writing that one down, thank you.
What do we call that? The cylindrical file? We want to put that in?
Yeah. Put that one in the archives. Yeah.
Two-part question. You kind of touched on this with your last response, but I got a little curious. So you were with Sony Cambridge, Guerrilla Game, things like that. What would you say are the pros and cons between working for a larger entity and then now versus you being on your own in Polygon doing your thing?
So I think the biggest like positives are like creative freedom. We can do what we want. That's the big one. And I think when you're in a bigger team, even when you're an art director, the company will have its goals, and obviously PlayStation is a huge company, so they'll have ideas of what they want different studios to be doing. And so you as an individual on that team, even if you're in a kind of lead or art director, you'll have a certain amount of influence on that, but but not a huge amount sometimes.
Right.
Probably be quite well, maybe not that surprising. But so yeah, the best thing about being indie is like you can tell quite personal stories, right? It's like, well, this is something that happened to me that's inspired me, and I want to talk about this, or I want to make a non-violent game, or I want to make a game that's colorful. Yeah, just being able to do that stuff. And one of the really nice things was being indie, in which we kind of had to stop ourselves. I wouldn't say pinch ourselves, but we had to like stop several times and going, this all feels like it's happening quite quickly because you don't have like approval meetings. It's
right.
like, shall we do it? Yes. Okay, we're doing it. And it's like, yeah,
That's it.
That's it.
There's kind of no
That's the
checks and
meeting.
balances to be like, all right, maybe we shouldn't try this, or maybe we shouldn't do this. It's that kind of freedom is you can get kind of lost. And I can get behind that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's the kind of the negatives are like you don't like rock up to a studio. I mean, no one's rocking up to a studio at the moment anyway, but you don't kind of get to like cycle to the studio and like get a coffee and have a chat with people. So like, yeah, like iWis is like my study in our flat in Cambridge. And so like we all work remotely. We don't have a studio space. So that's like a downside. And Cambridge is quite nice because it's quite there's a number of developers around here. So and like the science park where Jagex and Frontier, their huge studios are just like up the road. So it's kind of nice to be able to, when you could meet people for lunch, like at the food park, go and like meet people for lunch is kind of quite nice. But yeah, some of the kind of, I guess, in the safety of a big studio and the kind of community aspects and social aspects of it, yeah, they're kind of the things that you miss. I think from an art point of view, one of the things that you kind of miss is like fresh eyes, because obviously you're the really small team, and so you're looking at stuff quite a lot. So obviously, yeah, sometimes you can get a little bit blind to things, so it puts more importance on stuff like user testing in terms of like puzzle balance, or like just taking breaks or sending something to a friend to like look at animation and say like, I've been staring at this for like a week. Does it
right?
Code block.
Tell me what you think.
So otherwise, like when you're in a studio, you'd go, hey, you, what do you think of this? And they go, oh, that bit's a bit jarring, and because they've got fresh eyes, they'll be able to spot it immediately. Whereas, so yeah, but I think overall, I really like the freedom of indie stuff, and I was quite, because obviously all the kind of business side and that the kind of pitching to people was completely new to us. Like we pitched projects internally, but it's kind of completely different when you're, as a company pitching to publishers and platform holders. But it's the kind of freedoms really nice. But I think as getting a bit older, the being able to like put something into a game that feels like a kind of I guess like I won't say personal statement, but like it's an expression of you and your ideals and how you feel about the world. That's kind of nice. It feels cool, and actually the response, and then I guess the response to when you get like good responses to the game and to its story, and when it resonates with people, it makes it all more rewarding, I guess.
Yeah.
You feel like, that landed, that kind of resonated.
Yeah.
Did you do all the art yourself?
So I did. I did all the characters and animation apart from I had my friend Martin, who's the guy who's in Australia. He did like 3 months like animation support stuff for us. So he did some animation on the characters. But yeah, I did all the characters and all the monsters, and Tom did all the environment stuff. We had a lady called Sarah who we also worked with at Sony, and she kind of supported him on some of the environment stuff. But yeah, the whole art of the game is like 4 people max, but most of it's like 2 people.
Right. The environments are stunning, man. They are beautiful. Like again, I don't want to spoil it for some of the people, but when you come into that cave during the wolf trials on the left, man, with the water falling upward, I had to stop. I had to call the wife and to come look at the screen. Like, isn't this beautiful? Like, this is why I play video games. This is amazing.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Yeah, man, that was brilliant.
It looks amazing. Yeah. It looks amazing.
So, part 2 of my question: given that freedom now, like, was this? You said you wanted to make a non-violent game. Was this what you envisioned immediately, or was it an evolution of sorts? Was there any type of conflict as to what exactly you wanted to make the game into?
So basically, I knew that that I wanted to do the kind of modern take on the classic adventure game. That was that was a given. So that was like the first thing set in stone. That was the first like stick in the sand.
Right.
And I think that's tends to be how we like approach some of the creative processes, looking at kind of, okay, what are the kind of knowns, what are the kind of, you put your tent poles in the ground, and then you can start looking at what you're going to construct. So because otherwise you can get overwhelmed with like all the possibilities. Like you can make anything. Wow, so much stuff, so many possibilities.
Right.
So first one was like, okay, modern take on updating the classic adventure game, and then we had like 4 or 5 different settings, like that we were kind of playing around with. That might be like the story of the characters, but then and we like I liked some of them more, and Tom liked other ones, other settings more. But then he kind of stumbled upon like the Scandinavian folklore stuff, very much the kind of folklore of the monsters, and we both knew that was the one, because as soon as we started digging into it, even like after half an hour, we were like, "This is it.
This is it."
And
when you know, you know.
Yeah, and me and him have got quite a close. We've been working together for so long. We've got quite a kind of good, like creative understanding, and like when we both kind of happen on something that gets us both excited, it's like, okay, well it's kind of easy then. And they said that all the rest kind of fell by the wayside pretty quickly, and then we started working up kind of the like building up our cast of characters, because the game isn't really I'm guessing we've kind of like taken inspiration from Scandinavian folklore, but very much just our take on that. So it's kind of we kind of cherry picked the monsters that we were the most interested in, and kind of built up a cast of characters so they'd resonate with each other well. So you'd have lots of contrast and variety there. But then after we had the kind of broad idea of the story, like within the first like month of development, and that broad story didn't change, and like throughout development. But I'm guessing a lot of obviously the nuance and like some of the meanings and the emphasis did change and evolve a lot, but the kind of high level story and the ending was something that we had at the start, but then it was a lot of iteration. But the stories are really interesting, because we always thought like people would get it as like this is a game about Scandinavian, like the wilderness and like folklore and monsters, and but then it's also, we kind of wove in this story of Tuve and a family and what's happened to them.
Yeah.
And not to give too much away, but at certain parts you'll kind of confront some of her past memories, but within gameplay. And that wasn't something we expected to really get that much attention. Like, 'cause we were trying to tell this, you're telling a story about people, and you're going to get into some of their fears and their motivations. It's not just about someone going and meeting monsters. It's quite shallow.
Right.
We want to have depth there, depth to the characters, but yeah, when the game released and the reviews and people's reactions to it, and how much the kind of human aspect of the family and their story really resonated with people, we were pretty shocked, because we obviously put a lot of heart and soul into it, but we didn't think it would rise to the surface as much as it did. So that's been like really delightful, but yeah, like really, really touching as well. Like we've had some really touching messages from people when the stories resonated with them for various different reasons in their own life. And so yeah, you feel like, wow, there's a kind of, yeah, it's been nice that it's kind of that, yeah, it's resonated with people. We've got a lot of messages from people saying they've been crying.
And like that's the thing that I love about your game and games like it is that you guys are able to tell stories that you just don't see in those big AAA games, and they get real personal, like you said, and people, they really do resonate with people. Like there's a ton of games that I've connected to, and like the story, I'm not done yet, but the story in this game, like it's touched me in numerous ways already. So just top marks on the storytelling, man. It's really good.
Oh, thanks. No, it's not. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think get to that point of like stories resonating with people. I think sometimes that it can be about leaving gaps, like and breathing space. So I think basically when you're trying to tell a story, if you're literally like dictating every single detail of the story to like the player, and basically then it'll become like, okay, there's not much room for me to imprint
Yep.
me as the player on the game. And I think when there's like gaps for people, there'll be parts where you're just running through the forest and something's happened, you've got time to think about it. Or the fact that in the game we tried to be quite what's the word? Like we have cutscenes in the game, but we tried to basically make most of it as gameplay. So you're building up the story as an active agent by examining things rather than I'd sit you down for an hour and a half and watch this cutscene. And part of that is a reaction to having worked on cutscenes.
I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, so if you think about it, playing a video game is almost equivalent to reading a book. You can leave it open to interpretation depending on what you read, how you read it, how it's presented to you. So allowing that gap, like you said, for me to, I'm walking in the forest and then something happens, I may interpret it differently than B does, than Key does. So allowing that, instead of having this monologue of text, just shove that at me, be like, here, have this. So
yeah, like you're kind of able to use those gaps to put your own experiences into those tones and things that they touch on. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing it's just seeing what what resonates and different. And I think the nice thing about working in that way is that different people will take different things from it. Like people can just experience it as a story, like an adventure story about monsters, right? And then, but then some people will be more they'll be more get into the kind of characters and their story. I think one of the things we tried to do, and this is probably one of the things which, when we're talking about kind of modern take on adventure games and like puzzle design and difficulty and that stuff, is that we had we wanted people, if people wanted to dig in more and like explore more, then they could, but we didn't want to force them to do it. So that if, like, for example, we have like the journal in the game, it's kind of multi-purpose, and it'll be a map, it'll be like Tuba's notes about monsters that she's met, and like bits of like loot and like achievement badges and stuff that she'll get. So it kind of houses all that stuff. And the idea behind the journal is that it's kind of like optional lore. So basically, if you want, you can go and like read stuff about the monsters and find out more about the folklore. But when we did this is the kind of thing, you get some happy accidents, right? So we didn't really when we were kind of designing it, as in like the systems for it, we didn't really realize that from a narrative point of view, actually it's quite powerful because it gives us this, like these are her thoughts that she's writing down. So it's kind of like in her internal monologue, and it's stuff that maybe she wouldn't feel comfortable verbalizing in conversations with monsters or things, but these are like her inner thoughts and fears. So it actually gave quite a lot of the depth to the narrative, because it kind of she's quite this is like her vulnerable writing, right? The kind of the thing she wouldn't voice. So that was quite powerful from a narrative point of view, which we hadn't really
it just kind of happened. Yeah, and it's good. It's
I love that you built that in, because I like, when I play games, sometimes I'll go to the next level and I'll like go on wikis and things like that to get more lore. I want to be that. I want to be invested. So you have one built in? Yes.
So I actually have a question. It's actually like a 3-part question. I heard you mention their name multiple times. So it's Tuve. It's not Tove. It's Tuve.
It's Tuve.
Yeah, it's like Tova.
Okay.
And the game is Röki.
See, that was my next question.
Yeah.
So where it's kind of easy to explain to people in England how to say it, because you say it like you're from Hull, which is like a town where people have very strong accents.
Gotcha.
So it's more like an sound, and that's that comes from the 2 umlauts.
Gotcha.
Of the O. Like the name's an interesting one. So the game is named after the monster. So like the film Jaws, we kind of the game is named after the monster, but and you kind of see the monster at various points in the game. It kind of drifts in and out of the story, but it's quite a critical character from a narrative point of view. And the name itself is kind of like it's a made up word, but it's kind of It has some origins in like the Röki at the end of Ragnarok or Ragnarök. You're saying it like
gotcha.
That's cool.
Which is kind of has like some, depends on where you look, but it has some loose like smoke, fire, and like darkness. So that comes some of that, and the character is like pitch black, like big furry creature. So we kind
of looks cool when he smiles, man. It's nuts.
Yeah, that was one like that was one of like the first things we did. So interestingly, when we were talking earlier, I'll probably jump around a little bit. But when we were talking earlier about people pitching stuff and that kind of thing, like we did. One of the things we did in the first 3 months was we did this like announcement teaser trailer, which had like it's about 50 seconds, and that was kind of before we had like much game, and so we were like, right, we're going to do this trailer, and it's like a dual purpose, right? So one purpose is like it'll kind of like softly announce the game, and so like it will start to attract like publishers and stuff like that, or get you get some press articles out of it. But it also for us was a creative exercise in locking down the art style. So we're like, right, and because then once something's out, you've kind of committed to it. And again, it's about putting a kind of a stake in the sand of like, okay, because you can have like any kind of variety of art styles, and it is like one of the things that's a real key ingredient for a game. And so in like deciding on that earlier on and like really pinning it down, we're like, right, that's it, that decision is made. It's off our massive list of decisions to make.
Right.
Yeah, and so taking some of those things off the table, like the announcement teaser, was a really good exercise in that, and picking the name was one of those things going like, right, yeah, what is it going to be? And we had like check. We've got like lots of Norwegian friends, so we had to like check that what that our ears sounded good didn't mean something that was like
right
offensive.
You got to double and triple and quadruple check.
Yeah, or like taken by something else. So like picking a name for a studio, a game's always like really painful. I think we're really pleased with where we ended up. So
now, so I have the game on Steam, but it is available on the Nintendo Switch. How challenging was it to get it on the Nintendo Switch? And are there plans in the future to have it on the PlayStation or the Xbox?
So to get on Switch was okay. We'd built stuff in a way that actually, because the art style, it's got this kind of flat shaded graphical art style. So we did like a few character optimizations, but really like the game you get on the Switch is exactly the same game that you're getting on the PC. There's no they are like all the geometry is the same, all the details the same, all the lighting the same. It has all the same like same effects and stuff. So we kind of built it from the ground up, and we'd been like developing it in tandem. So it wasn't like something we did after.
Gotcha. That's the way.
And it was kind of nice. I think one of the nice things about the clean graphical art style is that it scales very well. So you could play it on a big TV, but it also reads very well. It's not too noisy, so it reads very well on a smaller screen as well, rather than being like everything getting lost in the details. So that's been quite nice. And in terms of like bringing it to other platforms, like we've been really excited to see people's reaction to it. Obviously, we're looking at what we might do next as a studio, but yeah, like I wouldn't rule it out coming other places in the future. So
cool. Nice.
Let's see, we PS, Xbox. I think this is a game I would keep on switching. I don't know. There are these types of games I like to be able to bring with me at any point. Like I might get the itch to play it. I can't bring my home entertainment consoles outside to bring me. So having it on Switch is advantageous to me.
I play most of my stuff on the Switch now. So I was like worked at PlayStation, and I played like got the now PS5 here, but my PS4 was my like shrine to go. Sit there. That would be my de facto place to go. But obviously, I grew up on SNES, and the convenience of the Switch is kind of outstanding. And just being able to, I really struggle to not play games on the Switch now. I think it's a really great bit of kit, and I think like tonally as well, it's the best probably tonally, it was like one of the the best fit for our game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Visuals and like the kind of I think it's found a really good home there, and people's reaction to it on the Switch. And actually, Nintendo's support of it has been great. We were featured in it was like back in Gamescom, like Nintendo Indie World. They picked us.
That's awesome.
Oh, really? That's super dope.
Yeah, so it was that really amazing, and it's one of those things where we didn't really believe, like the Game Awards stuff. Like we'd got communication that was going to happen, but we were there in Cologne at Gamescom, like sat in a cafe, like watching the stream, going, "Please let it be on there," because it'll be really disappointing if it's not. So yeah, it was really nice, and they've been really awesome at highlighting the game on the store and like newsletters and all that stuff. So that's been really really cool, and like but I'd still have a soft spot for the other consoles as well. But the Switch tends to be where I play most of my stuff.
Yeah, I've got it on Switch. I like, because I love my area up here, but sometimes I just want to lay back in bed and just play some games while I'm chilling and laying down, and the Switch is like perfect for that. And even if I can still connect it up to the HDMI and plug it into my TV if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like supremely flexible, and I think just the thing of like, because it sleeps so well, right? You just go press a button, bam,
it's done. Yeah.
And then like pick it up and pick it up and drop it, and it's like just that kind of feels very instantaneous. Whereas like on a traditional console, I'm sure the new ones are like super fast, but some of that booting up and
I mean, even with the PS5, you still got to hit the button and wait for it to boot up. So it's
and all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely
my amplifier in the lounge is like old, and so like which button is it again? Turning some of these dials, and it's like
yeah, the Switch. I mean, that's what Nintendo does, right? They always try to create these cool, innovative consoles for us to play. So
create and innovate.
They did another good job with the Switch. I mean, the Switch is wonderful. I'm curious if there's going to be another kind of Switch soon.
I'm pretty sure.
Talking to each other about like a Switch Pro and things of that nature, but we'll see.
Pretty sure. Like we mentioned a little earlier, we actually have a few people that follow us that are kind of curious about this realm, or have already actually delved into this realm of game creation. Me and Kay, over a decade ago, we actually put our hands into RPG Maker, try to give it a try, and from what you were explaining earlier, like the number of people that you had on your team and the number of items that they were responsible for, and just in art, just drawing it and then having it animated and then the cuts and all that, it's a lot of work. So just me being two people with RPG Maker, we obviously only got so far. I'm wondering what type of applications that you're using, like if you have any preferences, if there was some that you use and you didn't like it, some that you use and it was probably incompatible with what you want, with your vision and things like that. What exactly did you use to create this game?
Sure. So in terms of 3D, so the game engine is Unity. And one of the things that we did is that we kind of cheated, and we basically we bought as much stuff as we could in terms of like middleware, and so basically we bought like a tool suite called I think it's called Adventure Creator, and that basically took care of some of the kind of underlying like stuff like inventory and menu systems and like scene loading, like some of the kind of, it basically meant that we didn't have to do those things, and it was like pretty cheap for us to buy as a studio. I think it was like $70, so it was like really cheap considering all the stuff.
And that kind of $70?
$70, yeah, per like person who uses it.
Per person, okay.
But then we're a really small studio, so that's still like really
not too bad.
Yeah.
And basically the compared to the amount of time it would have taken one of us to do that stuff, so that was really great. So I think that's a really good thing. Like if you can like take, if there's solutions off the shelf, like don't do it yourself, because obviously if you're enjoying doing it yourself, or it's an area you're particularly interested in, that's great. But like if there are solutions, like ready-made solutions off the shelf, it's good to utilize that stuff. And Unity, and I'm guessing like Unreal is pretty good for that, getting certain things and plugging them in. But that was the big one for us. So in terms of like software outside of that, we use Maya LT as for our 3D software. And the LT is like the light version of Maya. So Maya is like it's like a 3D modeling and animation package that's used like films, games. And the reason why we use that is because I've used it for 20 years.
There you go.
So you kind of know the product a little bit.
Yeah, well, but it's kind of problematic because you're kind of hooked and it's hard to get off that train.
Right.
And so all your kind of muscle memory for the keys and stuff. So I've recently started using Blender, which I would recommend, which
I've
is
heard of that.
Blender's like a very, very powerful, very fast, like 3D modeling and animation thing, and it's totally free. So like the Maya LT is much cheaper than like full Maya, but it's still like I don't know, like maybe like $30 a month subscription. So it's not like cheap. Whereas like Blender is free. But first, the fact that Maya now is a subscription rather than having to like pay a massive.
Right.
So when we left university, there wasn't any indie version of Maya. There was only like, here's the really expensive Maya, and you pay it.
And that's it.
Like Photoshop. Photoshop used to just buy Photoshop, but now it's on a monthly subscription type thing.
Yeah. So yeah, like Photoshop we use as well, and so like those subscriptions are actually quite handy for us as like indie studios because we can like pick them up and drop various packages like video editing packages as we need them.
Right.
But yeah, I think like we probably will carry on using Maya LT just for like because of the kind of muscle memory factor. But Blender is definitely something I'm interested in trying out more.
Better than the other, you think?
Blender is very quick in terms of like it's very like responsive. The playback time is very quick. I'm guessing it's quite a lean bit of software, whereas like Maya's got quite a lot of like bells and whistles. So sometimes it can get a bit chuggy. So if I was to start learning one, I would learn Blender.
And it's free. That's great.
There you go, folks. You heard it.
There's loads of like really great tutorials for it. I did some like animation for like a friend for a friend's project on it because that's what they were working in, and I was like, it's always nice to learn new stuff. Even being an old dog, you got to learn new tricks. So
right. It's always learning.
But yeah, I was like really surprised about how well once you get over like, why isn't that button doing what my brain says it should be doing? And yeah, I thought it was really really great to use. I don't really know too much about the kind of the modeling side of it, but I know there's like loads of tutorials for it, and it kind of exports straight into Unity like anything else, So yeah, those are the kind of the main ones we use. I don't think we use any other software outside of that stuff really. I'm guessing one of the things that was key for us that we went into the game's quite long, like it's like 10 to 15 hours depending on how much you dig into stuff. And I think because we knew we wanted to make this kind of quite epic adventure with an epic story and lots of different monsters. And in order to enable us to do that with a tiny team, we knew we were going to have to kind of cut our cloth and be relatively smart about how we did things. So one of the I'm guessing so we came at it from like a kind of almost like a producer point of view, is like so we know it's a given, like epic adventure, lots of different locations, we want this. So how are we going? But we know we can't do like 3D photorealistic characters like we were doing at Sony because on Killzone 2 I spent 3.5 months making one character.
Right.
Oh my god.
And now like characters that can take like longer. And so we were like, okay, well, our game is going to be like friendly and like non-violent anyway. So but basically we looked at the kind of traditional 3D art pipeline of like, okay, like you make your characters, you texture your characters, and in the game you'll like light characters and do light maps and stuff. So basically we looked at this and went, right, what can we chop out? Is it like what happens if we just remove texturing from the art pipeline? And so that's where the kind of flat shaded art style of the game comes from. So basically there's this really time consuming thing called UVing in like 3D artwork, where basically it's like unwrapping your 3D mesh, which then allows you to paint a texture, as how the texture is kind of wrapped around the 3D.
Gotcha.
And it can be really time consuming to get it really efficient and to like not be stretched in certain areas. And so we just went, let's try and remove that. And then so basically we have the flat shaded art style, which is focused much more on like the shape and silhouettes of the characters to make sure they read. but like if you look at the characters, they have very minimal texturing, and then and also lighting in engine, we basically just removed that. So basically the way that the lighting in the game is basically pure color choice, as if it was like a painting. There's no
okay.
Yeah, like each scene is just like boom, but it looks great. Like you don't need the lighting.
In some ways, it allows you to get your vision much closer. The thing you see in game is much closer to the original vision because you're not having these extra elements that are coming in. So basically, well, we took like texturing and threw it out, and we took like kind of like additional lighting and threw it out, which basically meant we could work much quicker in terms of art production. And it's kind of nice looking at stuff in terms of creative limitations, going, right, what are our creative limitations? Okay, well, my creative limitations are that we only have one person to do the art for this whole game. Okay, well, trying to make something in like a photorealistic art style is going to be impossible. So how do you abstract it? How do you get something that still looks high quality and interesting, but with it's an interesting way of like looking at things with creative restrictions. I really like that way of working. I think you can get some really interesting results by doing that. But the other thing, which kind of, and it's like, we tried to do this really hard. We kind of failed, but it's still the best rule. Like, keep it as simple as possible. Like, just keep on like simplifying and throwing things out. And just try and keep it really, really simple. That is the kind of keep it simple. Stupid is like the
KISS. That's old school.
That's very old school. Yeah,
like,
the old KISS.
It is like always and still now. I mean, the one of the interesting exercises in game development can be, in order to like keep you on course, like you've got this idea, you're really excited by it, and they have this thing. You can have like 3 pillars of your game, and it's like so like one of them might be like exploration, and one of it might be like emotional storytelling, and one might be like frenetic gunplay, or so basically you'll have the 3 key ingredients for your game, and those can be kind of quite high level and like almost like, what's the word, like tonal, I guess. Then basically you can, and anything that you're putting in your game, you should be able to look back at your 3 pillar statements or words and go like, this thing we're doing, does it fit in any of those things? If it doesn't, then it shouldn't be there. And so it's kind of like, so it's like a framework that you can use to kind of ratify the things that you're creating and making sure that your vision is like staying consistent as you're developing stuff. But that doesn't mean that those things, like your pillars, can evolve, and that you can, if you actually, we thought this thing was the cool thing. Actually, when we've done some like user testing, we found out this thing is the thing that people are really excited about. So why don't we champion that and actually restructure things a little bit? But having those frameworks are it's a really nice way of not getting lost in your own game or development, or just like and making sure that you're working smartly on the things that are kind of the most important things. So,
stick to the mission statement. Stick to the pillars. Like, do your best to stay focused on those things.
It's really tough, and actually, like, no one should feel bad. Like, it doesn't matter how many years you've been making games. Like, still a really big challenge every single time, and like every game is different. Every game has different challenges. So it's so also like try and keep on enjoying it as well. That's the kind of
right. You got to have that love, man. If you don't enjoy it, man, yikes.
Yikes. So the game is out. Can you tell me the name one more time?
Röki.
Okay.
Röki.
It's gonna take a minute.
It's gonna take a minute.
All right. So the game is out and it's booming and people absolutely love it. Is there anything you can tell us about plans for future projects? Or you guys have anything in mind?
There will be one.
Boom.
It's kind of something we're working on at the moment, and I'm guessing what the stuff we can say is that we're keen on developing a strong studio identity in terms of like art-led narrative games. So that will continue to be our focus moving forward. and like non-violent stuff. I think we've enjoyed making a game that's in that space. So yeah, there'll be things we want to evolve, but I think definitely we're trying to kind of build a strong vision for the studio and its DNA. So I think there'll be kind of definitely in terms of like art-led stuff and the emotional storytelling, they're key things that we want to take forward. But yeah, maybe it'll be a slightly sunnier setting. It's been actually really weirdly, like, because we were like finishing the game off at the height of summer and it was like really hot here. Well, hot for like us as like pasty English dudes, but it was like really, really hot as we were finishing off the game. And the game is all like snow and quite cold.
Yeah.
Quite nice now the weather has caught up to the game and people are playing it.
People are playing it
inside and it's all snowy in the game. So that's that's quite nice. But yeah, in terms of like art and storytelling, those are the kind of key things we want to take forward and keep on making games that delight people and that people find unexpected elements to them. And and like folklore is something that interests us. So we'll see.
You want to keep making like strong story driven adventure type games? That's you want to be like that your studio's MO type thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
basically
sign me up.
Right.
Like, you've already got us. You got us with this one game.
Yeah, that's easy.
You know what you're doing, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be, and also like we've been working hard on this one for a while, so I think we're going to like take our time and like make sure the vision for it is like really strong and the foundations are really strong, and then when it's ready, we'll we look forward to like sharing what it is. But it's still very much like in gestation. So.
Oh,
fair enough.
Storied history, almost 20 years of game development in several disciplines, large studios to closed studios to your own studio. What advice would you have? We keep coming back to this, to those that are listening that want to get into this. What advice would you have for those who want to get into this? What would be like, let's just say the top 3 things you like, this is what you need to do to get started?
So I think the first thing would be like knowing what kind of role you want to do is like a really it might sound like common sense, but like there are lots of different roles in game development. And like you're saying, like I want to be an indie developer. Okay, well, that having made that decision, that kind of then you can then work out how you do that, or whether if you want to be like a weapons artist and you just want to do like really photorealistic like weapons or props for games or characters or animation. And almost like when you know what it is that you want to do, then you can start building up a body of work in that area. Because it's basically like if you want to get a job in a game studio, it's all about portfolio or show reel, like to be able to demonstrate some of that stuff. So I think like knowing, like having a kind of clear vision of what you want to do within video games is a really good is first step. And then the studio, obviously indie stuff, like start making things, there's loads of like game makers toolkits, a really good YouTube channel that kind of delves into like some of the design aspects of the games. But they're really like you can like do research and you can watch things and you can read up about things, but the way you are going to learn most about making games is by making games. And like, but just try and keep it like really like simple, but you can like fail and it's fine, but like keep on but I'm making game I've learned loads in the last 3 years, and you'll keep on learning things. So like if you want to make indie games, like make games is all like you can have to be like something really big, can be something like it's really good to start small and like make something small and finish it and then go to the next one.
Finish it.
Yeah.
And make sure you finish.
We need to finish it. We need to go back and finish ours.
And then like it doesn't even have to be something that's released like commercially. You can just take it to like an indie games meetup or like show it to your friends and get them to play it and get the feedback. That's so that's like the indie stuff is like you can start making games. But the studio stuff, like getting into a big studio, it's all about showreel from like an art perspective anyway. Like you need to be able to demonstrate that that here is my work, and people then go, okay, wow, I can see that they're really proficient in doing this. there you go into that slot. So a lot of it is about like showreel and stuff. It's not really about like qualification or like degrees, or it's all about quality of the work. Like yeah, it's all about the quality of the work. I think like sometimes when qualifications come in handy is if you want to go and work abroad somewhere, but I think like ignoring that stuff, it's all about the quality of the work. No one really cares about qualification. Like from my experience of hiring. Yeah, but like keep it simple is a really good rule. Also, like perspective is really important in terms of like taking a break and like basically what you usually find is, and this is the thing is like I've had to learn over quite a few years, is that if you're sat at my desk and I've got a problem with something, it's not working, or like there's something's off here, I can't quite see what it is. I just take a break, go and have a bath, go for a run, do something else, and come back, and don't like try and brute force it. Just take a break, come back, and you'll find you'll be in the bathtub for like 5 minutes, and the light bulb will go.
Right. That is video games 101.
It's like giving yourself fresh eyes. Yeah.
I'm stuck somewhere. Yeah, I'm getting frustrated. Let me just walk away real quick, and then you solve it. You're like,
yeah, like you solve it while you're making a sandwich or something. Like, oh, duh, wow, duh.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like making stuff. I guess there's something out when the brain isn't directly confronted with a problem. There's some magic happens.
Right.
So that's really important, and I think just like trying to maintain that kind of work life. Like if you're in a kind of like good place, like mentally and physically, you're going to probably be much more creative, rather than that kind of like crunching or working yourself too hard. Like it's good to be passionate about what you're doing, and it's good to work hard at stuff, but you'll find that like you work hard, but then you need to rest. And if you work too much, it'll basically be like diminishing returns, right?
Yep.
It's very quickly your productivity will fall off a cliff, and you'll become probably less productive. So one of the things I really liked, I can't remember who told me, it was like one studio that didn't do like overtime and stuff like that. Basically had this idea of like heightened working, where everyone's like, right, we're going into this heightened working mode, which basically means like some of those things you do where you have a long coffee break, or you check a don't do that stuff. Just be like really on it and really productive, but in those kind of core work hours. And like going into that extra gear, but then like I think that's a kind of nice way of doing it. As I kind of much prefer that than the idea of like overtime and stuff. But I think it's really important to kind of to keep like rested and like a good focus. But it's kind of one of the difficult ones. Like as much as people tell you, it's kind of one of the things you kind of sometimes have to learn for yourself the hard way. But maybe that's. Hopefully other people are much smarter than me. So it's, yeah.
So lastly, I got a 2-part question for you to close this thing out is, number one is, what are the goals for yourself and in your studio, as well as what games are you playing right now? Like what games are you excited for?
So, okay. Well, it's basically, I just got this, which is on my desk. So this, let me see.
Oh. What is that?
Ooh.
What's that?
It's like a British made like retro console.
Evercade?
Reese loves those. Here we go.
Yeah.
Hold on. Is that an Evercade?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he knew what it was. That's crazy.
Yeah, I kind of I got it as like a belated Christmas present to myself. But basically, it's a way of playing emulated. Yeah, it's kind of cartridge-based games, but each cartridge is like a collection of retro things. So
nice.
I kind of like. Because one of my friends is like really into the retro scene. He's got like a Raspberry Pi hooked up with all this stuff, and it's like it's really amazingly cool. But like for me, I just kind of want something I can plug in and I can just play it.
Retro?
Oh yeah.
He's got a Raspberry Pi hidden around there somewhere. I'm sure.
Oh, it's somewhere, yeah.
So yeah, I've been playing that but only just recently. It just kind of feels like nice now. But I like the idea of like not having to mess around with downloading stuff, just like plug and play, and so that's been quite cool. So the other ones I've been playing is so I've just started playing. I think it's called Dandara. It's a game published by Raw Fury. I think it's developed in Brazil, I think, and it's like like a 2D Metroidvania game, but it's got like a really cool like setup and way you move around. You don't walk around. You can just like, it's all like 0G, and you just like ping around the screen. And it's got quite a nice like dystopian uprising setting, but while still being quite colorful and lush. So that's been really cool. The other game that I've been playing, so I do play it like a lot. My wife's a nurse, so I have to get up really early, and so I kind of play a lot of games early in the morning before I start work, whilst get her a coffee, and then I've got like a couple of hours to play.
That's the way.
So yeah, Unto the End is a game I'm playing on Switch. I think it's on all the platforms, I think. So that's like a kind of, almost looks a bit like Another World, but it's like a kind of really stripped back, doesn't tell you a great deal, has really great combat, but it's kind of like a Norse setting, wintry, so there's commonalities with our game, but that was quite nice to play. Ring Fit, to try and keep my
I wanted to get one of those.
My belly in order whilst we're in lockdown, so I tend to play that quite a lot. But yeah, my diet of games tends to be quite broad. I'm a huge fan of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That is right up my alley right there.
So yeah, I mean, actually, some of that stuff informed like some of that kind of almost archaeological storytelling you get in Röki is like inspired by some of those games where you're dropped into a world, something's going on, you don't really know what it is, and you'll gradually piece together the mythos and story of the world. I think that's a really powerful way of telling stories. So yeah, but I will play all sorts. Like, it tends to be like indie experiences now. I tend to gravitate towards like stuff where I can play a game in 10 hours and then I'm done. Like, I do like some of those bigger experiences, but it has to be something like pretty special for me to kind of like stick at it for a long time. I think the longest game I played recently outside of like Ring Fit or Animal Crossing was Spiritfarer, and I think I was playing that for about a good 30 hours, 35 hours.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah. Spiritfarer. So that's it's really cool. It's made by called Thunder Lotus. It's like you're this little girl and you have this like barge on the sea, and basically it's like you're kind of like the what's the word? It's like in Greek mythology, it's called like Charon. It's like the kind of the riverboat man who takes you to the underworld across the river. So it's basically about going and meeting these characters, and actually it's presented in quite an uplifting way, and it's really nice. But a lot of it's about charting a course and like building up your relationships with characters. So yeah, and that's the really exciting things about indie games, like the diversity of experiences and different types of genres you can have. It's just like, it's just really, really exciting. And there's always like I wish I could clone myself and have one of me. Just
right. Right. Because I'm trying to play Hades as I'm playing Röki, and I'm playing Call of the Sea. Like, I'm playing all these indie games at the same time and still trying to play FIFA and Call of Duty at this. Like, it's just it's a mess, but it's fun.
That's the nice thing. And like, sometimes like it's kind of a bit like Wes Anderson movies, right? Where actually I watch one and it's like each of them I go, wow, I really like all his films. Then you try and like watch a few back to back, and they get a bit samey, So actually having that variety there is like, I'll play this, and like, okay, well, now I fancy this. So it's I think that variety is what's really exciting me in games. And also like in terms of being a game developer, like anything creative, right? It's really important to just not be digesting the thing you're trying to create, or basically, like, we're creating an adventure game. Like, actually there's so much stuff in there that has influences from outside of that genre. Like, in terms of like some of the UI stuff actually was heavily inspired by Destiny, in terms of like how things slow down when they're close to things. Lots of like usability stuff. I think any creative thing you're doing, if you're writing like a fantasy novel, like if you just all you're doing is reading fantasy books, then you'll create something that's probably quite generic, because all you have as your influences is this quite a narrow thing. Whereas actually, if you you look watching world cinema from all over the place, or reading comics, or it's like having looking at nature and like nature documentaries. Like, if you want to design a monster in a game, like you should go and watch some like BBC wildlife programs because there's plenty of like weird looking things at the bottom of the sea.
Right.
Oh yeah, I watch that all the time, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so having a broad interest of things is kind of is nice, and that's the kind of thing that's exciting for me about the indie space. Yeah.
So we actually told a couple of our friends about this interview that was going down, and they checked the game out. And one of them popped in the chat to say that they absolutely loved the gameplay and the story as well. And two of them said that this is probably like their favorite game that they're playing. So you definitely created a masterpiece of a game there.
Yeah. She definitely put 10 out of 10 on there.
10 out of 10.
But yeah, dude, we just want to thank you for your time, for your knowledge, for your advice. It's been a wonderful interview with a wonderful person and a wonderful team who made a wonderful game.
So,
wonderful.
And yeah, thanks very much for having me on. It was a real pleasure chatting to you all. I think that's one of the nice things about, well, one of the only nice things about the current situation in the world is actually meeting people virtually and engaging with people and like chatting to people is kind of, it's how we meet new people now.
How we meet new people.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you very much. And with that being said, I think we're going to end it here. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. It's been a great time, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace.